Hello everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about makeup lab options if that is something that you are interested in doing. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we are doing this. We actually typically always have a makeup lab option where we have one day in the semester where it's just devoted to if you missed a lab for whatever reason, you can come in and do an alternate lab assignment. However, this semester I know was extremely hard for some of you. It's our first semester with being back on campus. It might be the first semester for many of you who actually being on campus. And I know sickness was a big deal. And some of you have been really great about being very cautious and not coming to class when you have suspected that you might be ill. So I do not at all want to penalize you for that decision because that was a decision that is helping your whole community, helping everyone around you by preventing our hospitals from being too overflowed if you happen to pass along something to someone else. So I appreciate that you were that thoughtful. And I want to make that up to you by giving you lots of options for makeup lab assignments here at the end of the semester. So we will continue to have the makeup lab, the in-person makeup lab as an option, and then a couple of online options for partial credit. Normally we do not have those online options. And because we are back in person and uh, colleges are pretty much back in person for labs, we want to be consistent by having that be kind of a minority of the grade being some sort of an online activity. So let's talk about these options. So your options, there's again one in-person lab and a few other online options. So the in-person lab is going to be a melting point lab activity. So we'll take a look at that here in a moment. This lab can be for full credit. And when I say full credit, what that means is that if you had a 1 day in-person lab activity where you had a pre-lab assignment, those are typically worth 10 points. So this would be worth up to 10 points that you could do to replace. Typically, this would replace one, full day 1 day lab activity that you had missed. So you can completely replace that by participating in this activity. If you do this activity, you should come to lab as you normally would with a pre-lab activity prepared. You don't have to write it in your lab notebook because you probably don't have your lab notebook, but write it down somewhere, and then I'll check that when you come in, and then you'll do the lab. So it will be very similar to a regular lab that we have done throughout the semester. For the online activities, these are some of the things that were done in the last academic year when we had limited lab activities for most of our chemistry courses. There are 4 options here. You can do up to 3 of the 4 options. So that is your choice of which of those you find the most interesting to do. And these are worth partial credit. So again, you're not getting the hands-on experience that we typically associate with lab. So it's not really the same thing. So you can get up to 80%, which is plenty of credit in terms of getting to a passing score for the class. So I want to walk through some of these options for you. So let's go ahead and look at these options in Canvas. So if you go to Canvas, this will be under the review for exam number 4 area. So all of the makeup labs, including the melting point lab, will be here. So initially we have the information about exam 4. So obviously you'll want to be doing that, but then the makeup lab video will be right here. Obviously, it's not there yet, but that's where you'll find that. And then we'll have the various options for your makeup lab. So this one is the in-person one. So that's worth, could be worth full credit. So if you have to do one, I'd recommend doing this one. And then if you need more than one, I would recommend doing this one and then pick from among the following. Depending on how many labs you missed, that will determine how many of these that you would want to do. So you would basically do one per missed lab, and I say missed lab. If you had any lab that you scored less than an 80% on, and you would like to do another activity to replace that, I would be fine with you doing that. So I want to just look at each of these in turn and say a few things about them in terms of the expectation. In most cases, it will be basically what the lab says, and that's true for this one. So the first lab, you'll basically go through and do all these activities, and there's a lot of kind of links to outside sources that you'll be reading about to get some information, and then doing some filling out some data, doing some calculations, and about different types of electromagnetic radiation, and then you'll be drawing some conclusions about them, about their safety based on those results. So that's the first one. So it's electromagnetic radiation and public health. Many of these are, so we did, these were often activities that we did the last academic year when everything was shut down in terms of being in person. So I tried to find a way of making things that were somewhat related to the pandemic. So that's the case for this one. And then this next one obviously is kind of right in the title that that's what it's about. I haven't actually modified this from the initial assignment. This was actually the first assignment we did when we came back from the 1 week crash course on how to do all of this that no one's ever done before. So this is talking about some things that were in kind of the initial things to be aware of with the pandemic in terms of why we actually shut down in the first place. So go ahead and do this, but the kind of the end assignment will be a little bit different here than what it is describing. Okay, so I want to talk about right here. So between now and Monday. So what I would like you to do instead, so when we did this, obviously we don't have a class on Monday this semester, so that part will be different. But when we did this initially, the way the assignment worked is we had a class-wide group discussion about some of these things. Obviously that's not going to work for a makeup lab when not everyone in the class is doing that. So what I would like you to do instead is basically write a paper that summarizes these things. So it would probably be, about a one-page paper, and go ahead and talk about the things mentioned in the observations, but also discuss the intermolecular forces idea and exponential growth. So you do want to talk about these two main ideas in your discussion, as well as what the observations are asking for. So a little bit different than the way we did it initially, obviously, because this is a makeup lab assignment. The next one, this one is actually not related to anything COVID related, but it's a lab that we did during that first semester. Related to dilutions. So we've done some dilutions this semester, and it's an area that I think would actually be helpful to have more expertise in that. So go ahead and there's there are some questions here related to videos about dilutions, as well as a few questions calculations you'll be doing based on that. So this is, again, it's I think the only one that's not in any way directly related to the pandemic, but it is one that is important. We have had some labs where dilutions were important, and it was an area that I could tell people could potentially use more more practice in that area. And it's something that will come up for you if you do any amount of scientific research in any field, whether it's chemistry, biology, physics, whatever you do. Probably the one thing from this class that you are most likely to use is the dilution equation in the types of applications that come up in this online lab activity. So I wanted to include it as an option for that reason. Okay, so the next one is using Star Wars to understand the relationship between various small particles. This one is also sort of a pandemic-related question because there have been many questions about the effectiveness of cloth masks, and this kind of gets at some of those questions based on using some conversion factors to think about, well, how big are these things actually? So we are looking at the size of molecules and some polarity issues as well, and then using a lot of conversion factors. So that is another option. I think that was the last one. I believe so. Okay, so let me go back to our main page and kind of scroll down to where we were. So you have melting points is an in-person, so can be 10 out of 10. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do 3 of these 4 as well for up to 8 out of 10 points. So those are the options for a makeup lab this semester. Hopefully that covers things for anyone who has missed multiple lab days and gives you some options. Again, I appreciate your willingness to keep your community safe by staying home when you were sick. So please let me know if you have any questions about these options, and I look forward to getting those from those of you who do these. I'll put a note in here in terms of the due date and things like that when that goes up. I didn't put that on the slide, so I don't want to just say it without including it there. So I'll put a note on the page itself for the due date. Good luck, everyone. Have a good rest of your semester.